Okay, for the first step in the CrystalTop finish series process, what we're going to do is we're going to put the base coat down. The base coat is that tornado gray. It's a real light gray. And in this, I've already put the color in, and I've used my filter, poured it through the filter, got it done, and washed this off. So this is all taken care of. And the things we're going to need is we're going to need the, obviously the paint tray. I've got the 1-inch foam brush, and we're also going to use the microfiber roller to put the base coat down. The first thing that I always do is I want to make sure that there's no hairs that are going to come off while I'm doing this process. So a real quick and easy thing to do to make sure that nothing comes off. I've got this, and I'm going to just pull this across some tape. And what that'll do is that's going to pull off any of the extra fuzz. So you can see there's a little bit of fuzz on there. So now this roller is good to go. In the kit, I've also included some gloves. So you want to have those on. Now, we're going to start on the back side, and we basically just work our way forward. So what I like to do is use my 1-inch foam brush, and I'm going to get the very top and get in there and just kind of dap it along and get that coat down. So you use the 1-inch foam brush to get to the areas that the roller really can't get to. And you can see with this, I'm not brushing across. It's almost like I'm just pushing it in, up and down kind of motion. And just get it so it's fairly smooth. And I always make sure that I get that edge enough that it covers that black line, which you always have in the Formica countertops. And this dries fairly quickly. So I always, if I get like a little bit of a run, I always want to make sure I go back and just brush that smooth, because it will build up. And you don't want to have a build up on the base coat or really on any colors. You want it to stay fairly flat so that you have a nice smooth surface to go over when you're doing the sealing. Now, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just go in here real quick and get that caulk if you have caulk. That way I know for sure that it's colored. All right, now we're going to use the roller. Just roll it across. Now for the base coat, most of the time, I'm going to do what I call like 1.5 coats. I'm going to go over this, get it one coat like this, and then I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to go back over it real quick with another coat, but the amount that you'll use is much less. It's getting that base coat, and that's what uses the most amount of color. You see I'm just going back and forth, making sure that I get a nice color consistency on this, and while it's not completely soaked, I'm going to go and do the edges. Go around. And the edges, you definitely want to keep it tight because you don't want runs. Now remember, with the first coat, it may look a little bit splotchy. That's okay. You're going to do another quick coat over it and give it a more consistent color. Put this out of the way. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go over this one more time with the, just across the edge. You just want to make sure you don't have any runs anywhere, and this is good to go. So this is basically the base coat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this process to the other countertops, and then we're going to go to the second step of the coloration, and we're going to do the silver. Okay, you can see that it's been about 30-45 minutes and it's dry to the touch now. I'm going to go ahead and put a second quick coat on it. Actually, this really is enough, but since I've got plenty of color, I'm going to go ahead and put one more coat down. We're going to put the silver and the pearl over top of this, so that's why if there's any slight discontinuity in it or little blotches, that's fine, because once we put the other coats, it's going to cover it as well, and it just makes it look even better. Okay, now that we've got the base coat down and everything is dry, we're going to put the silver on that. I've already put the silver in my paint tray. If you want, you can use a styrofoam plate too, and you can put a little bit in and just roll it in here as well. Either way, whatever you prefer. Make sure you always use your strainer though when you're putting in the color into the paint tray. What you're going to need, that's included in the kit, you're going to need your sponge, you're going to need your faux roller here. This is the 6-inch faux roller. And you're also going to need, which is not included, you're going to need a mister of some sort. Basically what I put in here is just distilled water, and that gives me the ability to mist it over so it'll break down the colors a little bit and make them a little bit softer. So I'll use that as well. So that's what we're going to need. And basically, I like to get this a little bit wet so it's a little more absorbent. And the same way with this roller, but just do a real light misting of it, because you don't want too much. Okay, get this out of the way. And what we're going to do is just put this into it. And I am going to roll this on. And you can see you get a lot of speckling through this. And basically you're going to want to do as much or as little as you want of the white, or the tornado gray to show through. So we're going to do a fairly decent amount on this. We don't want too much of the tornado gray to show through. Now you'll see here, now I'm just rolling this back across and I'm just getting some that I want.
Now, if you get a little bit too much silver in one area while you're rolling this, don't worry about it. Once you finish this part, you can go back with a sponge and use the tornado and touch up that area so that it's not quite so heavy with the silver.
And I'm just rolling as much as I want to get that look that I'm going for. And I'm starting to get fairly close to the look that I want. And then you're going to do the same thing with the edges. You're just going to roll this across and you'll be able to see a little bit better here. Okay, now that I've got kind of about the amount that I want, now I'm going to touch it up with a sponge. And I'm going to get into these corners here that I couldn't get into with the roller. And you're just going to rotate your sponge back and forth. Now I've included a small paintbrush to get into this line, because you're going to see a line that goes across there, and we want to kind of fill that in so you just don't have that stark line that goes across. So a little bit later I'm going to touch that up with that paintbrush, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Now we're going to get the top as well. Now the CrystalTop colors, basically will bond to not only Formica or laminate, it'll also bond to corian, and it will also bond to tile as well. So if you had a tile backsplash, you could actually color the tile backsplash the same color that you have for your countertop. So you can just see I'm kind of going in and filling in areas that look a little too much white or too much of that light gray. So just keep going, sponging in. Now, the next step that we'll be doing is after we get this, I'm actually going to be putting
The white pearl.
which has a pearlescence color to it as well. You won't see it too much. It won't really look like it's much difference once I put that color on it. But when the light hits it a certain way, then you'll see it. It gives it up. It almost kind of shimmers as you walk across it.
Now, what you've done with the silver, you're going to do the same thing with the CrystalTop series pearl. You're just going to use a lot less of it.
The other thing you can do is, while this is still a little bit wet, if you want to mist it, it kind of soften everything up just a little bit. Just got to be careful on the edges. You don't want to do it because you'll get it to run. But on here, while it's still wet, you can mist it a little bit. It'll just kind of help the color to meld a little bit, soften it up. And even if you wanted to, after you've done that, you can just go through the whole thing and it'll meld it just a little bit better even. The other thing you want to look for is if you've got having to get a glob of the color, you want to kind of dapple that off as well so it's not raised too much. So this way it just kind of pushes things a little bit closer together, melds it a little bit so it's not so sharp. This kind of gives you that, once this is sealed, it gives it a real soft appearance and it gives it kind of almost what I call a hammered steel look. I've included a small paintbrush, and that's basically to get into this. You might want to fill the top just a little bit. It's hard to get that sponge in the very back end of the top of the backsplash, so you can touch up that so there's not so much white that's shown through for the tornado color.
For the coloration of the pearl, follow the same steps that you did with the silver coloration.
Well, we're going to take the
Pearl.
I've sponged it on here, rolled it out, just did it randomly, rolled it through just like I did with the silver. You don't really see it. And then I sponged in this area as well, just to make it even, get your edges, and that's pretty much it.